What's up? We're in the next part. Goodness gracious, the speech lag. I'm so grateful whenever my content saves because I never really know what's gonna happen. It could go anyway. Anyway, please go check out the previous part to gauge your bearings, to understand what we're talking about here. But I'm basically ranting about how it is that I need to leave South Africa. I need to get out because at this point, whether or not I win a lawsuit is irrelevant. What helps a person along is comfort. The Bible says, blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. It also says, blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. I've been mourning without comfort, and I've been showing mercy without being given mercy. That means that you are living in a deadbeat, dead-end country. Do you understand? And if you are a Christian, Bible-believing, and today you're safe. There was a time when living as a Christian in this country, I was safe. Living as a believer in this country, I was safe until I stopped being safe. So if you are safe, get out now. And this is the reason why I'm saying get out now. And go to Europe in particular, because America is about to crash and burn, given its sins that are heaping up to the heavens and they're not repenting. Go to Europe, and the only reason I'm saying Europe is not because it's better than America. I'm saying Europe because Europe houses the Antichrist. And so God is not going to allow the utter destruction of Europe due to the fact that for his own purposes, it has to stand erect at the beginning of the tribulation. And as a Christian, you are pretty much safe as up to the point of the beginning of the tribulation. That is if you believe in the pre-tribulation rapture, which I do. Not so much if you believe. The true rapture is going to ultimately be revealed to us as to when it is. I do believe it's pre-trib, but you will be safe up to, at a minimum, the beginning of the tribulation, which we don't know when that's going to be. It could be tomorrow, could be next year, it could be in 5 years. But at the rate South Africa's going, no believer is safe. The country will ultimately fold, crash, and burn because God will devastate it. But before it does, there will be so much violent injustice against believers that they won't be able to live properly while everybody else is able to live. And so when everybody else is able to get their own daily bread while you're the only one starving, who in the world is going to sound a cry for help on your behalf? I've been crying for almost a decade without being heard, while everybody around me has eaten and gotten fat. So because there is no ubiquitous famine in my country, it is not therefore an alarm that is raised for my rescue to get me out of this impoverishment. Everybody else in my ecosystem is still okay. Everyone else that I've ever known is still employed. Everybody else is able to buy homes and clothe their children, taking them to school and everything. I'm the only one that cannot live, and so apparently it's not a big enough disaster to report. So you don't want to be that girl or that guy. You do not want to be the girl and the guy that everyone is ignoring, just like the hobo on the side of the street, because everybody is fat. People will be fat still continuously that don't regard God and could not care less what he has to say. But you who regards God, you're going to be a minority. Do you understand? In a country full of fat people. And that is a recipe for ignore me disaster. That's a recipe for ignore me disaster. The only time a people group get paid attention to when they're starving is if all of them are starving. But when you're the only one starving, everybody's going to act around you like you are lazy. They're going to act around you like we're working and you're not. So go chore grandshab. I mean, really, if anybody does not want to work, let them not eat. They will attempt to call you lazy, which is what people have done with me. Everyone has continued to work while I lost everything. And even though all doors have been closed to me, barriers to entry have been erected against me, they are trying really hard with every bone in their body to claim that I'm lazy. So I just look like some lazy hobo on the side of the street. And that's why they're getting away with murder. If you don't want to find yourself in that position, understand, you gotta leave. It can happen to anybody. It happened to me. I never in my life imagined I would ever be so impoverished because I am so hella smart. I am so intelligent and I'm so ambitious and also so focused. Apparently when you work really hard, you sow, you therefore reap what it is that you sow, right? Yeah, I was sowing really very fruitfully into all of my endeavors, acquisitions, career, education, everything. Nonetheless, despite all that, I still crashed and burned with my nose to the ground, teeth breaking and everything. A woman like me is not supposed to be poor unless, I mean, that's the thing, unless she is a Christian. South Africa, this like silly country, I don't even know what is going on. I don't want to be here. I gotta leave, y'all. It's that basic. I gotta leave, and enough for me to leave South Africa, it would take a miracle because I don't have anything to offer any other country other than my impoverished state. I'm the kind of exile that nobody wants because what are you gonna add to our thing that we're doing? What value are you gonna add? It would take a miracle for me to be given basically asylum in another country. It would take a miracle. If at all I was maintained in my employment, I would have offered my degrees. I would have offered my skills, my expertise. I would have offered my experience, and they therefore would have been prepared to make out of me an African diaspora, a skills exodus out of South Africa and into some other nation. So, like I said, whatever it is that I am, it would only take a miracle from God to get me moving out of here. It would take a miracle. It would take a miracle because of the fact that, like I said, I don't have anything to offer. But I am looking at God and I'm praying to him. Last night, when I saw the reporting on YouTube of this information, when I happened upon it, I cried. I cried because I was like, I looked at God on some, how are you going to leave me here then? When this is what's going on, how are you going to leave me here? Like, I'm Lord, God. Like, it's clear. I've been serving you. It's going to be near on impossible for me to get a work permit to go and work anywhere else. Nobody's even going to want to listen to me. Nobody's going to want to scoop me up. Nobody is going to want to give me citizenship in their country until the tribulation, until the rapture happens, until such time that we get to a point, do you understand, where it is that now all Christians gotta go from the earth at all, because gushube that much. There are places where it's easier to be a Christian than where it is that we are, where I'm at here in South Africa. And the ease of Christianity is not so much gliding in your faith, it's just that you get hurt at all. There are still travesties being recorded and documented as travesties. And insofar as there is any kind of support for that voice, it is more comfortable, there's more leg room, less tightness of pants worn in the room when you live in a country like that as a Christian. South Africa used to be a land that you could wear loose slacks for jeans as a Christian. Now, we're like at the time when I got born again, already jeans were starting to become the somnganga somtsompareng. Now it's like I'm wearing baby clothes as a grown woman, the way that literally it does not fit. The country does not fit any Christians anymore. South Africa does not fit Christians. And those Christians in the country that imagine that I am exaggerating, that's the thing about prophecy. The Lord goes before quite a distance in advance. That's the thing about prophecy. The Lord will tell you of disaster coming 4 years before it comes, 5 years before it comes, a decade, 2 decades. The book of Revelation was written thousands of years early. Prophecy, the book of Daniel, even farther back than that. Prophecy is prophetic precisely because it is a forecast of the future, and it can be the immediate future, the midterm future, or the long-term future. And so when you are being given prophecy today, a lot of times God has given you leg room to make a decision, an informed decision based on that prophecy. It's like a watchman telling you a sword is coming to the land, giving you ample time knowing that sword is coming in 4 days. You've got therefore day 1 to pack your bags, day 2 to fetch your family, day 3 to fill up petrol, and then drive out before the pestilence lands in day 4. The Lord gives you time. He does not just hoy prophecy in your general grill and then tomorrow, boo, disaster is like landing all over the show. He gives it well enough in advance for the wise to gather themselves and act appropriately in accordance to the prophecy. So South African Christians who are currently imaginative of the fact that what I'm saying is bizarre, it is extreme, there is no way this can happen, you're still safe, because just the other day you were celebrating winning the rugby. But with the kinds of decisions that Cyril Ramaphosa, our head of state, who is also the head of the ANC, with the kinds of statements that he made alongside the other buffoon trying to run the country called Julius Malema and other people in our parliament, the decisions they made 3 days ago are the kinds of things that should make Lot start packing a bag and putting some sneakers on the daughters and the wife so they can run. Our nation cannot stand against the decisions it has made. It has been years that South Africa has been so blasphemous. It's been years. It has been years. Listen to this, South Africans, okay? I mean, like, I'm shadow banned, so I don't even know what I'm talking into, but I'll nonetheless record this message. Jews are not saved unless they are messianic. Let me say that again. Jews are lost and so hellbound like everybody unless they are messianic Jews. And so just because Jews hate what Cyril Ramaphosa is saying is irrelevant. It's irrelevant because they are currently without favor from God. They are walking away. They are not in their first estate. They have rejected their Messiah. The people who have got influence over the decisions of the country are true Christians because we are the ones that are in right standing with God. I have only happened upon one rally after what happened on the 7th of October 2023 in Israel with the attack by Hamas at the music festival and at the kibbutz. Yeah, there was only one healthily populated rally that I watched on YouTube that also had a healthy amount of views. That was anti-Hamas and also having basically taken a stand against what Cyril Ramaphosa said after Hamas attacked Israel. Cyril Ramaphosa and the ANC came forward and said, just like Antonio Guterres of the United Nations, this stuff is not without context. Free Palestine, something along those lines. South Africa officially, as on a national level, stands with Palestine. And after that statement was made, there was a rally that was quite heavily populated. But guess who organized it? It was a rabbi. It was a Jewish rally that was attended by some South Africans, largely Jew, but also non-Jews who stood with Israel. Rabbi Goldstein, his speech is on YouTube. You can go check it out. And you would feel very motivated when you listen to it. But you would ultimately get punctured when you realize that, of course, he's a rabbi. Of course, he's Jewish. Of course, all Jews in South Africa are going to stand against what happened in Israel. They're going to be pro-Jews, pro-Israel, because they're Jewish. Like, you know, it's like in the days of apartheid, being a black person, you're obviously going to be pro-free black people, unless you're an Uncle Tom. So the only Jews that are currently standing with Palestine are the tantamount of blacks who hate themselves, like Uncle Toms. They are Uncle Tom Jews. There are Jews who stand with Palestine, but they're Uncle Toms. They're sellouts. But the large majority of Jews, wherever they find themselves in the world, will always stand with Israel. So you cannot use Jewish rallies that you observe to basically use as a litmus test to gauge the anti-Semitism of South Africa. And then upon being inspired by a speech given by a rabbi in Sandton, imagine that it's not that bad in South Africa. You cannot do that. It is only when non-Jews who are Christian and maybe non-Christian, when they stand in solidarity with Israel as a country, that you can feel safe as a land. When believers in Jesus Christ stand with the Jews, and when other non-believers, whatever it is that they might allege to as a religion is irrelevant, just insofar as they stand with Israel, that's when you can basically just kind of sit down in your country and eat pawpaw, because tomorrow is likely guaranteed. But when all that is standing for the Hebrews, for the Jews, are Jews, that's not going to do anything for you, because God is listening to the prayers of Christians, not of Jews. They will ultimately cry out to the one that they have pierced in the tribulation. When they realize the Messiah did come, they rejected him, they will be recovered to him, but not now. It's not happening now, meaning that currently their prayers are hitting a ceiling. Nothing is happening with them. Their heart cry from South Africa is not being received with any level of favor by God. He will not rescue South Africa for their sake. He has scattered them all across the world, including in South Africa, but he will not rescue South Africa for Jews who have rejected Christ. He will do no such thing. He will, however, salvage South Africa for Christians that have rejected the hatred of Jews and that have stood with the Messiah and are therefore standing in the gap for non-Messianic Jews that will eventually wake up and smell the coffee. But currently they are blind. Currently they're blind. So if you're not standing in the gap for Israel as a Christian, I don't even know why you call yourself Christian, because it makes absolutely no sense at all to even walk in replacement theology, because God will ultimately, never mind restore the Jews to himself, but the land that everybody is laying claim to, trying to say that it belongs to Philistia, is his. And he is going to even expand it when he returns. And he's also going to land his feet where it is that the majority of them are settling right now. Go the West Bank. The Mount of Olives is go the West Bank. And that's where God, when he returns, is going to put his feet down. That's the Bible. So it begs the question as to whether or not Christians in South Africa, since there are 70% of you, whether you're even studying the scriptures. Because if you were studying the scriptures, you would know how this ends. And you would understand that you are on the wrong side of history when you stand with Palestine. Or when you don't take a stand at all. You don't even get to say, I don't care, no, what's this, like, I'm not pro-Hamas or pro-Israel, I'm just pro-Jesus. You, like, no, that day is gone. The day is gone for you to play politically correct and neutral. It's entirely gone. You have to take a stand for the land of God, because this is not an attack so much on the Jews as it is on God's promise for that land. His intention to rule and reign from it for 1,000 years. And the land of which will also, according to God, never will die. Zion will never ever die. That's what God says. So you, like I said, never mind pro-Zion, not pro-Zion, but pro-Jew or pro-Hamas. It's about being pro-Christ. And you cannot be pro-Christ without feeling really strongly about people trying to take that land. You have got to feel strongly about it because it's literally trying to take a piece of the kingdom of heaven for the kingdom of darkness. It is trying to take the promise away from Isaac and giving it to Ishmael by force, or being indifferent as to what happens. Not being prepared to take a stand against Hagar for insisting that her son is the son of the promise. You gotta correct Hagar. You gotta say, no, it's Isaac. No, it's Isaac. Ishmael was born first, we get it, but the promise was given to Isaac. And so, I mean, if you're a firstborn child and your dad gives the inheritance to another child, you are of course going to feel entitled to it, riot, because you lack knowledge and understanding. You lack, training. You lack context. Ishmael lacked context. And that's why he is warring right now with Isaac the way that he is. To him, it's, I was born first. I was here first. I populated this planet first. So I deserve my dad's inheritance, basically by interstate succession. As the firstborn son, I ought to inherit this. But God is the one who chooses. Remember the Bible in Romans 9. Jacob I have loved, yet Esau I have hated. Jacob was the second born out of the twins, and he came out grabbing his brother's heel. The Lord saw it fit to give that promise to the younger child, even though the dad was set on giving it to Esau. Isaac wanted Esau to have the promise, otherwise known as Edom. Today we know that Edom is going to be entirely eradicated from the earth altogether. Not even a single descendant of Edom will inherit the promise. They are utterly cut off. Edom, they were utterly. But Edom was chosen by who? The dad. Edom was chosen by Isaac, but Jacob was chosen by God. So when you lack context and understanding and the divine interpretation of a set of events, you will think very naturally by the laws of testate or intestate succession. Testate succession, of which is basically a last will and testament that you write and you give an inheritance to a particular son. Whereas intestate succession is if you die without a will and automatically the kingdom is allotted to the son that is the oldest. Well, God is the one who is the testate successor, in the sense that he writes a will and says the kingdom will go to Jacob, even though the dad is trying by testate succession as a mere mortal, and also intestate succession even if he were to pass away. He wants to give it to Edom, he wants to give it to Esau, but God is like, I'm God, I'm in the heavens, I do what I please. No one can speak and have it happen unless I have first decreed it. So Rebecca was able to basically cause her favorite son, who was Jacob, to trick the dad into giving her the promise, into giving him the promise. And so herein lies a testate succession into the right hands, based on the one above who decided, even though the one who was making the promise, or who was sending over the inheritance, was in his deathbed deceived. Bottom line is, the succession went to the right child. It went to Jacob. Well, similarly too with Ishmael and Isaac. Ishmael was born first, and by intestate succession he was supposed to inherit the kingdom. He was supposed to inherit what would now today be like the land flowing with milk and honey. But guess who was the one who did a will in testament? It was God on high, and he said Isaac is the child of the promise, and this promise was given even before Ishmael was born. The promise was given even before Ishmael was born. So Ishmael holds no rights to the land, even in the slightest, given that decisions were made prior to his conception, and his conception was literally fostered as a result of a lack of trust by mere mortals in their God to fulfill what he said he would. Sarah did not trust that God would bring a baby into her belly, so she went and gave her mistress, maiden lady Hagar to Abraham, and so created all of this like war that we now today are dealing with. But without a lack of context to the roots, the originator, Islam, and otherwise known as Ishmael, will insist that we were here first, that Palestine will be free from the river to the sea. They will say stuff like that because they're thinking about intestate succession. We were born first, but you were not here from eternity past first. The promise was given from eternity past by God to Isaac, who would not be dealing with these issues if the wife of the man to whom the promise was made got antsy and anxious and decided to go and give some Egyptian woman Nochal to her husband to make a baby. And so now we've got this religion of Islam, That's what's going on. So if as a Christian you lack that context, that understanding, every so often you might be tempted to be pro-Palestine or have replacement theology in your bones. Not only that, as a non-believer, you also might be tempted to stand with what you call, the people who are now occupied, for crying out loud. You know, the thing is, Ahalang, in the Middle East, it's really confusing me as to why people are acting like this. But that's the thing. When the devil has been charged into anti-Semitic sentiment in people, they are irrational. They can't even think about the history that they even fostered and put in place. If you think about how it is that the Jews even ended up in Israel in the first place, it was after the Holocaust. The United Nations made a decision to give that land to them. And now today, its Secretary General is talking about them walking around in a suffocating occupation. Where is the first ever Secretary General of the United Nations when Guterres is speaking this level of rubbish? It is no wonder that he needs to be, why they keep on telling him he needs to resign. He doesn't even understand the history of his own organization. They decided to give Israel to the, they decided to give the particular patch of land to the Jews out of compassion for them, given how badly mistreated they were by Hitler in the Holocaust. And now Anthony Guterres says this thing does not operate in a vacuum. They've been endured through suffocating occupation for years. The suffocating occupation for years of which is a blatant and a flagrant lie. Why? Because Gaza was given to the Palestinians in, was it 2006 or what? And they said take it, and they even moved out Israelites, the Hebrews, the Jews, out of Gaza and moved them into Israel and gave it all to Palestinians. So where exactly are they occupying? Where exactly are they occupying? I don't understand. It's like I said, when the devil has put ideas in the hearts of people, they will make statements on the rooftops that are unfounded by fact. And some of these people will be such big authorities on the earth that nobody even understands why in the world they have that job when they have that lack of knowledge concerning what they're saying. And so therefore spreading what is indeed the equivalent of misinformation or disinformation. And then the whole statement about Israel being an apartheid state, like what it is that South Africa used to be. It is based, wait guys, yes, this whole, okay, so South Africa made a decision to cut diplomatic ties officially with Israel. That's why y'all gotta go. South Africa made a decision after some meeting that lasted I don't know how many hours as they were busy expanding on points. And they made a decision to cut diplomatic ties with Israel, following which they are now giving pressure to the Israeli embassy in South Africa to shut down. Y'all, you need to leave. I can't say that I personally want to go. I personally want to leave for South Africa because Guzo Shuba going forward. Nothing good is coming to South Africa. Nothing good. Just based on the Bible alone. And remember, I'm speaking to Christians, not unbelievers. So whether or not you believe the Bible at this point is irrelevant because I'm only speaking to those who believe the Bible. And so if you believe the Bible, you should run out of South Africa. Sprint. You should grab the legs of Sonic the Hedgehog and literally skedaddle on out of here before things start to hit the fan. South Africa cut diplomatic ties with Israel after a whole discussion that they had, because first they started out being pro-Palestine, and then they stood back, sat back, watched Israel basically retaliate, castigated Israel, tried to anyway. Well, really, thank God, Israel is the IDF. They're solid on their conviction as to what they need to do. Hamas must be eliminated. And so the resolve of Israel, even though they are a very humane fighting force, okay, revealing the realities of what's actually going on in those underground tunnels underneath hospitals, for crying out loud, and people's residential properties. They're showing all of the evidence, and yet the media is making a deliberate decision to disregard the innocence of Israel, the revelations of what it is that Israel is finding in Gaza, in favor of a ceasefire, the ceasefire of which is going to leave Israel in harm's way if they don't eradicate this threat. Like properly, a country stopping a war before the threat is over. Ain't no nation is sober or sound on that day when it makes that decision. And they are basing their, their call for a ceasefire on what they call to be something that's not operating within a vacuum. Very well. If you want to talk about vacuums, let's do that. If you want to talk about removing vacuums from an ecosystem and looking at the entire extenuating circumstance, you're gonna have to go back to the story of Hagar, Ishmael, Hagar, Ishmael, Abraham, and Sarah. if Anthony Guterres really wants to extract the vacuum, if he really wants to kick the vacuum to the curb like a soccer ball, he would have to go back to the book of, is it Genesis? He would have to go back to the story of Hagar and Ishmael and Abraham and Sarah. That's the lack of a vacuum. That's the context. That's the full scenario. That's the horizon gawking at you. That is the entire periphery staring longingly and lovingly into your face. So basically, what is then the context that Guterres requires right now? The fact that the land has never belonged to Ishmael. The promise was always given by the God of heaven to Isaac. So do you still want to remove things out of a vacuum? Essentially, Ishmael is entitled to something that's not his. Even the Bible predicted that he would be a wild man that the whole world is going to be making war with. Is that not Islam? Is that not Islam? Are they not incredibly violent even though they claim to be a religion of peace? That's the context. So Anthony Guterres needs to stop going back just 50 years. He needs to stop going back just 100 years. He needs to stop going back 150 years. He needs to go back to the very beginning. If at all context is what he desires. If at all context is what he's really intrigued by, he needs to read the book of Genesis. Is that basic? So this rubbish of anti-Semitism that is causing this level of affliction of Jews across the world, that some people are not even prepared to make a proper stand for because they want to be neutral, because they don't want to offend anybody. Yeah. It is literally going to lay some of y'all's countries waste and destitute just based on what God said would happen to you if you curse Israel. If you curse Abraham, who gave birth to, who brought forth a son by the name of Isaac, Isaac of which brought forth a son by the name of Jacob, Jacob of which his name was changed from Jacob to Israel. So if at all you want to eradicate Israel from the face of the earth, you are asking for you to go, because you cannot just say to God, no, we're gonna wipe you off the earth. He made you, he made your earth, he gave you a chair to sit down that your buttock might find rest, and if you don't want anything to do with what he wants, you go. You're like pottery, and as pottery, the potter can just crush you to pieces because you are disrespectful at this point. You are entirely irreverent at this point to dictate to the potter how in the world to make you. You cannot say, what have you done, O potter? You're just pottery. He can make you a vessel of honor or not. He can make you a vessel of dishonorable use. He can make out of you a toilet or a whole chalice for a king to drink. Whatever vessel you are, just take it. You're in your stride. Just take it. So if at all Guterres wants context, Bible. He needs to go and read the Torah, and he also needs to go and read the Bible. He needs to literally go out of his way to gain that context so as to understand himself as speaking misinformation when he talks about suffocating occupation. The land has always belonged to Isaac. It has always belonged to Jacob. It has always belonged to the Hebrews, not the Muslims. But the Muslims feel entitled to it because remember, they were born first, even though the promise was given even before their firstborn came into the world from an eternal God that did not give them the promise. But in order for you to believe this message, you gotta be Christian, right? Since Muslims believe that their God is the one true, they don't count at this point unless they're convicted right now of the truth. I'm speaking of people who are convicted of truth. I'm not trying to make a case to get people not today anyway, to get people saved and walk away from Islam. I'm trying to get people who are already convicted that Jesus Christ is Lord and that Israel is the land of God. I am trying to give you conviction as to what your thoughts ought to be about what's going on right now in Israel. Your context should be biblical. It should go all the way to the roots, and your decisions should therefore also be made in light of that. In light of that, let me save South Africa. I have saved, thank God. Let's just hope this thing continues to enable me along. South Africa has made a decision to cut diplomatic ties with Israel. Like, so much rejection, so much violence, and such a stand against the God of the universe. Like, properly, what a rejection of God. South Africa just literally stood on a rooftop as a country, as leadership, and rejected Jesus on the day they made that decision. They stood on television and they rejected the Messiah as a country, even though South Africa calls itself a Christian country. They rejected Jesus on the day they cut diplomatic ties with Israel. That's why, Gary, you gotta go. Christians in this country, whatever it is, Eshubayo currently is about to get hotter for you. And you alone. South Africa has officially rejected Jesus because they have cut diplomatic ties with Israel. What that means is that if we are trading with Israel, that's gonna stop. Two South Africans, or is it three, were massacred on the 7th of October. South Africa could not care less that that happened. There are South Africans that died on that day where Hamas went into massacre. But unlike Israel, South Africa does not care for its individual citizens on the ground. So the blood of those South Africans that is crying out from the ground for justice, our president is saying to it, pa, he's spitting on it. On some no. What Hamas did to you, my citizen, was just. And so just was it. With the context that I have that only goes back like 50 years. Yeah. That was so right that I am going to cut ties with Israel as a country in order to make my stand clear about how right your murder was. 2 or 3 South Africans passed away. That was one of the things that I could think about. Cyril Ramaphosa has just rejected Jesus on behalf of South Africa. When that is what is going on, you are not safe as a Christian. Do you not see? You are not safe as a Christian when your president has rejected your Messiah on national television. As a country, you are only 5 seconds away from being unsafe. Why is cutting diplomatic ties with Israel the equivalent of neglecting or abandoning the Messiah? I will explain, because you guys know I love to do that. Okay? What do you call this? Not only did they cut diplomatic ties with us, but now they're putting pressure on the Jewish embassy in this country, Israeli embassy, to close. Oh goodness. As like it, guys, you guys have seen movies where embassies are, right? American, let's talk about the American embassy. They're the ones with the movies a lot, where you see these like Americans that are dealt a bad blow by hostile civilians of a foreign country, and they run and say, I'm American, and then the gates of the embassy open and this person flies in and they're suddenly safe from hostilities outside of the embassy. Essentially, that embassy is as good as Israeli soil, or, well, in the case of movies, American soil. It's like it's right in America. It's got American laws operating in it. And so people are not subjugated to the tyranny of the laws of the land that they're on, because that's just how embassies work. What it is that Cyril Ramaphosa and co are insisting happen to the Israeli embassy is taking away that safety from them. It's taking away the ability for Jews, for Israelites, for people that are of Israeli heritage, when they are being attacked by anti-Semitic goons in the street, run to that embassy and say, I'm Israeli, and then fly into the embassy and find safe haven from anti-Semitic attack. With the rise of anti-Semitism across the world, for no other reason than this war that's happening in the Middle East, the Jews, more than any other time in history, need embassies in countries where they had diplomatic relations with those countries. Israel needs an embassy in America. They need an embassy in South Africa. They need embassies all across the world where they have embassies, so their people, upon being anti-Semitically mistreated, can run there, find asylum, and maybe even get shipped over to Israel instead of having to get out in a hostile country that doesn't want them. South Africa is pressurizing the Jewish embassy in South Africa to close, so Jews cannot run there when they're being persecuted. That's what South Africa is doing. That's what South Africa is doing. Do you understand? Like, are you listening to what I'm saying? Now, who are these people that are being so badly rejected? We're gonna get into it. 1 minute. Who are these people that are being so violently rejected, so terribly rejected? Who are they? Where do they come from? Let's get their roots. We already spoke about Abraham and Sarah. We spoke about their baby Isaac. We spoke about Isaac's babies Jacob and Esau. And then we spoke about the babies of Jacob, and there were many. 12 sons, tribes came from them. His name was Israel, the babies of Jacob. Do you understand? Yeah. From one particular baby, his name was Judah. Yeah. Then came the lineage of, lineage of a young man by the name of David. David, of which was given a promise for basically his throne to be established essentially forever and ever, and that the promises of God can never be taken away from him. Son of Jesse, that's David. Yeah. In the lineage of David, later on, some years down the line, would then be raised up a woman of the tribe of Judah by the name of Mary, in whose womb there was an immaculate conception, half Holy Spirit, right? Or rather full Holy Spirit, and the seed of a woman, fulfilling a promise already given in the book of Genesis, that the seed of the woman is going to crush your head, but you will strike its heel. Therein lies fulfilled promise. His name was Jesus the Messiah, preceded by John the Baptist, who spoke about him in the wilderness as the one that is greater than him that is coming. And he came to set the captives free, take away the sins of the world, the lamb that was slain. Yeah, that's Jesus Christ. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah, that same Jesus then went on right ahead upon him being born, killed, then resurrected. He then went on to raise up a man as his disciple called by the name of Paul, who unroot Damascus. Well, his name was Saul, and then unroot Damascus, he got changed into Paul because he met Jesus. And this Paul guy is the one that the Lord basically fulfilled Romans 11 through, where it is that he gave the gospel to the Gentiles. So he gave himself, the Messiah, to the Gentiles because the Jews rejected Jesus. And the biggest revival of the time was among Gentiles, not Jews. And that revival continued to happen until the whole planet was evangelized. So basically the guy that is taking us all to heaven instead of hell was born from the people that South Africa has utterly shattered diplomatic relations with, and is insisting that their embassy close down so that those people cannot find refuge, at least be safe for long enough for the Messiah to bring about Jacob's trouble, and in bringing Jacob's trouble, therefore also restore to himself the Jews who rejected him, a remnant, however, in the tribulation. South Africa is rejecting Jesse. They're rejecting David. They're rejecting Abraham. They are rejecting Isaac. They are rejecting Jacob. They are rejecting Judah. They're rejecting David. They are rejecting Mary's lineage. They are rejecting, therefore, Paul, who was raised up from the Hebrews, a Pharisee of Pharisees, to give you, sitting in South Africa, the gospel. A Jew brought you to the knowledge of God when he had chosen a small little people in the Middle East, in Mesopotamia, and then made a decision that he's going to give that grace to the planet, never mind the small people group. And a country in the southern hemisphere of Africa made a decision some time ago, thanks to, is it the Netherlands combined with the English, to accept this Jesus. And the British occupation of South Africa long ago, whatever happened, they brought the gospel here. The gospel of which started in Europe, right? And then in Europe and parts of Northern Africa and the Middle East. Yeah. It then filtered down to the southern hemisphere, reached the shores of South Africa on a ship, and South Africans were like, okay, we'll take it. So much so did South Africans say, okay, we'll take it, that now today, having started out just a pagan nation with ancestral worship as the only thing they're doing, now the main religion of the country is Christianity. Understand, Indians were shipped from India to come to South Africa to work, that were all taken by these guys on ships, these Europeans. They went to India and then brought Indians here, and they populated KZN, Durban. And even though they brought Hinduism with them, Hinduism never caught fire the way that Christianity did. Not even in Durban. They were not able, the Indians were not able to proselytize, or the equivalent or tantamount of proselytization, or evangelize. They were never able to evangelize with their doctrine, the country. What caught fire and was therefore proliferated was Christianity / Catholicism. That's what's good. And so granted that we now as a country identify as Christian, as a nation, as South Africa, we therefore got blessed. That's why we are Africa's leading economy. Also, you must remember, many of the countries in Africa are Muslim. So it means that God had favor on South Africa by making sure that instead of it being Muslim or Hindu or any of the other groups that came to settle here, it rather caught fire in Christianity. And so we got blessed. We overcame, we conquered apartheid. and then we threw everything away. We decided to go and grab an elaborate dustbin and just throw it all away with all of this insanity. It was a default religion for me to allege to Christianity from the time I was a child. You have no idea how blessed you are when you live in a country where you default as a Christian, because some people are born to default as Muslims. They are born to default as Hindus. They are born to default as just like African spirituality, paganism. And so if you're born in a land where you are already given the one true God, you just gotta run with him. You are super blessed. People in Iran, people in Lebanon, people in Iraq, people in Afghanistan are literally set up for failure from the very beginning. There are people who are like people in China. From the very beginning, there is a massive risk that they're going to end up in hell. From the very beginning. And those who do convert to Christianity in those countries, it's like punyuga bampete in the worst way. Like punyuga, like proper, like just through by the skin of their teeth. It's like they escaped something that caught them in a net from birth. So Muslim converts to Christianity are some of the most like miraculously recovered people on the planet. And many like those. People who get saved in countries that are extremely hostile to the gospel, miraculous recovery, evidencing the fact that God's sheep hear his voice and he leads them out. But when you're born in South Africa, you are literally, it's like you just slip into the right shoes from birth. Your baby booties have got little crosses on them. Your baby bib has got scripture on it. Your crib is engraved with the word of God. That's South Africa. You are born attending churches even though you don't understand what in the world is going on. Your schools, in them, hymns are sung at assembly. That's your nation. So you are basically given an advantage. You have got one up on everybody else that is not from such a land as that. But South Africa made like the hare. Do you know that story, that children's story, the hare and the tortoise? How it is that the tortoise was so slow and the hare was fast, and one time it slipped in the middle of a race. And the tortoise caught up with the hare and beat the hare. The hare woke up much too late, tried to run to catch up with the tortoise, but the tortoise won the race because the hare slept in the middle. South Africa is like the hare in comparison to the church in Iran that's growing. It's like the hare in comparison to the underground church in China. It is like the hare in comparison to the underground church in North Korea. There are churches thriving, growing, running with Christ, even though they were born like tortoises. They were born set up for failure. They were born in countries where they were not supposed to embrace Jesus. It was severely disincentivized to do so, but they loved him and they ran with him and they're standing with him. And in South Africa, being born like a hare, already you've got the speed. Your baby booties, like I said, have got a little cross of Jesus engraved on it. And you sleep for so many years that the Lord ends up destroying your entire country and gives your promise over to a land that hated him. And people there are thriving. The biggest growing church in the world right now is in Iran. Iran, with all of those hostilities. So all of your pamperedness, your state of complacency, your la-di-da lackadaisical thing that you're doing where you're even throwing the name of Jesus casually into conversations as blasphemy. Yeah, no. It has caused you to get to a point where God is no longer salvaging your entire country for your sake. He is no longer making sure your leaders are making the right decisions for your sake because you are no longer his. You are not focusing on him. You are not praying rightly. The Bible says, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and call out to me, I will heal their land, something of that nature. South Africa, your land would have been healed long ago if you actually were called by his name, and if at all you actually humbled yourselves and repented. But instead, you're the hare and you're sleeping. And in your slumber, you've got a president that has just rejected your Messiah. And if you continue to slumber, that same rejection of your Messiah is going to result in the kind of Christian persecution that you would find in countries that don't allege to Christ at all. Nations that are entirely Muslim or entirely Hindu. You're going to be dealing with the India Volume 2.0, China Volume 2.0, Iran, Iraq, Lebanon, Afghanistan Volume 2.0, but in South Africa. And it will be so uncanny how much this will be fulfilled in your land that you will never believe it. It'll be eerie, it'll be creepy, because you will never have seen it coming. But how can you see it coming when you're snoozing, oh hey? Well, tortoises are catching up with you and what is this, crawling right past you. Cyril Ramaphosa just declared war on Christianity. He declared war on Judaism by declaring war on the Jews, on Israel. He inadvertently declared war on Christians because those Jews are the but they're the forefathers. They are the preceders of Jesus, the predecessors of Jesus. Christ comes from them. He will never leave them as his people. He will ultimately go back to fetch them. So you cannot as a Christian reject them, for they are not rejected. They're the prodigal son. They're the prodigal son. And God keeps on saying to the prodigal son, don't hate when I celebrate my son that comes back because he was lost and now he is found. So I'm going to cut a sheep. You were already all along with me. So do not cry when I cut up an animal on behalf of your brother. They are the prodigal son that will ultimately return home. And so given that they're the prodigal son, the Lord has never ever written them off. That is the roots of Christ, the Messiah that has given you eternal life. And while you enjoy the luxuries of being born again in a country that does not persecute Christians, because you have the favor of the Lord on you, while you celebrate those luxuries, absent of recognizing the apostate state of your country, the moral decline of your land unto apostasy, when you are snoozing and sleeping and swinging in a hammock so lackadaisically as a Christian in South Africa, to a point where you don't make the right observations of your country's apostasy, evidenced by how it is that your president is able to bounce up and down like a kangaroo undetected as a hater of God. If a land is truly born again, an evil king won't thrive in it. He will not last, guys. ANC would not have lasted this long with all of its insanity apart from repentance. But a lot of rubbish is just lingering in the country. And Christians that have enjoyed the blessings of Jesus are not even waking up to realize that they are basically eating the delicacies of Sodom just before God rains fire and brimstone. They should be preparing to leave. Do not look at Jews being, of course, pro-Israel and doing rallies, talking about how it is that whatever it is that Cyril Ramaphosa has to say, that's not the sentiment of South Africa. Okay, fine. Very well. I absolutely 100% stand with the Jews who are anti-Israel. But if at all I'm not standing with Christians that are anti-Israel, that's a problem. Because it is our prayers that get heard, not the Jews. Because they've rejected their Messiah unless they're messianic. So their lament, their riots, their complaints, God is not going to go before and heed them. He won't do it for them, not in lands where they've been scattered. He will rather heed the cry of the Christians. He will only heed the cry of the Hebrews in the tribulation, when they finally acknowledge their Messiah. So it is basically non-threatening when South African Jews gather against Cyril Ramaphosa, the ANC government, the leading parties and even opposition parties of this country that came to a consensus about cutting diplomatic ties with Israel. It makes no dent spiritually, and so therefore futuristically, for Jews and Jews only in this country to take a stand against Cyril Ramaphosa. Because it's like Jews taking a stand against Hitler in Germany. One of these days they're going to be in a gas chamber and nobody's going to care that they're screaming until somebody finally finds out that they're in trouble. That's what it is that we're dealing with right now. The Jews cannot be the only people standing for their people. If the Christians are not with them in the country that we are at, it's over for the land at large. We cut ties. We want to get rid of the embassy. South Africa, we are a Christian nation more than we are a Muslim, and yet here it is that as a Christian nation, how hypocritical are you, you Pharisee? It is literally what Cyril Ramaphosa has done is show the true climate of the country. You are Sardian, you are Thyatiran, you are also Laodicean. Laodicean because you're neither hot nor cold, and because you are lukewarm, God is going to spit you out of his mouth. Thyatiran because you tolerate that woman Jezebel. Every evil wickedness here on these streets, you tolerate it. You claim that you're godly, but you keep on tolerating her, so God throws you into great tribulation and then puts Jezebel on a sick bed. You are Sardian because you are everywhere you go, everybody thinks you're Christian, and that's been my biggest pain point, because South Africa is apparently a Christian country that does not persecute Christians, and so when I talk about the persecution that I'm enduring, literally everybody is inclined to ignore me. So you have a reputation for being alive even though you're dead. That's you, South Africa. You are a combination of Sardis, Thyatira, and Laodicea. And being that thing, you imagine that as a country you're still going to be okay tomorrow, day after that. Your president has just declared jihad on Christianity by indirectly declaring it on Israel. He has stood with all the nations that stand against God. He has stood with all the nations that in the end are going to get swallowed up by an earthquake. He has stood with all the afflictors of Israel from about her. And last time I checked, this is what Jesus has to say about that random activity. 1 minute. What South Africa is facing, first and foremost, the Bible says that if you curse Abraham, you're cursed. South Africa has just cursed Abraham. Just like Naledi Pandor has been doing it, so too now is Cyril Ramaphosa doing it. It's just pandemonium, alright? Now, given that South Africa has declared boldly on the rooftops that we are no longer a Christian nation, indirectly, they have declared it, meaning that you're about to get into trouble. As Christians, you gotta get out. If you don't get out, you're going to get persecuted. I believe South Africa is going to be one of the most bloody nations against Christians. It's going to kill, massacre a lot of Christians in the tribulation. It's going to be among the most violent. I believe that. And it is because of all of the alliances that it is currently making, who it is that it is standing with. Currently, Russia is being namby-pamby and not standing with Israel because of the fact that it needs weapons from Iran. So that's how Russia gets made to be against Israel. Recep Tayyip Erdogan, we don't even have to talk about that Turkish guy, busy doing rallies against Israel, talking about how they need to be wiped off the face of the earth. There's of course then Iran, who has all these proxies all over the Middle East that are facing their weapons at Israel. Israel keeps on threatening to bomb Damascus and basically make it a ruinous heap, fulfilling prophecy. Nonetheless, with all of these speeches being made by Israel, all of these other surrounding nations are in turn basically conjuring up all different kinds of evil strategies to finish Israel off once and for all, because they want to be the Ishmael that takes the throne when it doesn't belong to them. Ishmael reminds me of Adonijah. Adonijah was David's son, but not the one that was supposed to take the throne. Solomon was supposed to take the throne, and Adonijah out here rocked up making himself king until Solomon was basically made to parade in a city and declare himself as king, and Adonijah got scared and fled. Ishmael is like Adonijah. He will ultimately flee when the real king returns with his saints, when he rocks up with all of his holy ones in the second coming of the Lord Jesus Christ. Adonijah is going to get slapped out the way and he's going to utterly disappear. He is a son of David, Adonijah. Do you understand what I'm saying? Adonijah was David's son, but Solomon was the one with the promise. In the same way that Ishmael was Abraham's son, but Isaac was the one with the promise. These things, these typologies have just kept on happening all throughout history. So we're dealing now with Adonijah volume 2.0. We're dealing with Ishmael 2.0, where it is that these people are trying to take a throne that does not belong to them. And God is going to ultimately kick them out the way, but not first before parading themselves as the real deal. They're going to get so much ubiquitous global support to afflict and plunder Israel that it's going to appear as if though Israel cannot stand until, like I said, the real king rides on a horse and puts the true David on the throne, otherwise known as Jesus Christ. Puts the son of David, that would be Christ, putting the true king there and giving the land to the true people of God. And Adonijah will have to repent. Iran will have to repent and acknowledge their second place to Isaac. Like ultimately realizing that you wanted to take the throne, but it belonged to your brother. And so if you want to enter heaven, you're going to have to accept your brother's rulership, kingship. So a whole bunch of Muslims at the second coming of Jesus Christ are going to be told, repent or perish. They're going to be given essentially an option. You can either worship the one true God as basically subservient to the Jews who got it right, however messed up with not loving their Messiah, and then the Christians were the ones that ultimately got it right. They're gonna have to humble themselves to the fact that out of all the Abrahamic religions, they were the despised one by God. They were the utterly rejected ones by God. And they're gonna have to put their tail in between their legs and embrace Christ, or frankly die. They will have to either go to hell or Sheol or honor God. And indeed it's written in God's word that many from Egypt will turn to him. Many from Iran, Lebanon, all the surrounding nations that currently persecute Israel. Philistia, Gaza. Do you understand? Gaza, of which is actually part of Israel. They were not supposed to give it away. That's what happens when you divide God's land. Ultimately you get given grief. Do you understand? They too will turn over to God and acknowledge him. The Afghanis will turn over to God and acknowledge him. The Afghanis, the Lebanese, the Arabs in the UAE, they will all love the Messiah. And those who don't want him, well, bye. Goodbye. They're like Adonijah that will eventually acknowledge that, whoopsie, I guess Solomon is the real king. They are the Ishmael that ultimately pays homage, do you understand, to Isaac. Who is this? If you think about Joseph's story as well. Joseph's brothers did not want anything to do with him being the guy that God had set apart for the job that he was set apart to do. And they threw him into slavery and basically left him for dead. Not sparing him a thought for years, imagining they'll never see him again. until they ultimately paid homage to Joseph. The very same thing that Joseph's brothers did with Joseph, so too will literally quite a big chunk of Islam ultimately pay homage to the God of the Christians. They will ultimately pay homage to the God of the Jews that they rejected and now have been reconciled to. They will make like Joseph's brothers, who initially, having been arrogant and pompous enough to throw their brother in a pit and then sold into slavery, they will now beg this brother not to kill them, and the brother will say, relax, what you intended for evil, God has used it for good, the saving of many lives. Islam are like Joseph's brothers. Islam are like Adonijah. Islam is Ishmael. They will ultimately be recovered, but not first before the second coming of Jesus Christ, and not also first before trying to eliminate the Jews from the face of the earth. So South Africa, when I was reading comments underneath that heinous YouTube video that I watched, there were so many people commenting with little tiny Palestinian flags, celebrating, saying, I'm so proud of South Africa. And one comment read, well done, South Africa, I'm proud of you. You are on the right side of history. I was wagging my head on some Shem. Look at how deceived this Ishmael is. Look at this level of deception. She wrote how it is that South Africa is on the right side of history, while South Africa is about to discover that they're on the wrong side of history. Wrong. Entirely wrong side of history. Palestine will be free from the river to the sea. No, shut up. Israel will be free. Not so much from the river to the sea. That's the thing. You are not going to get massacred by a merciful God if you repent. Right now, they are looking for complete annihilation of Jews, whereas the Jews are not looking for complete annihilation of them. Plus, this whole statement talking about how it is that Israel is an apartheid state. There is so much misinformation in this regard. There are no Muslims living in Israel right now that cannot frequent certain places. It's a lie. They are free to do what they want to do. They live there. If anything, Jews are not allowed in certain parts of the West Bank, and yet Muslims are allowed all over Israel. All over. There is no apartheid. Do you understand? But South Africa made a case for themselves in abandoning diplomatic relations with Israel, saying that it's an apartheid state, and given that we as a country come from apartheid, we can't stand with any such rubbish. For real? South Africa says that they can't stand with Israel because it's an apartheid state. That lie is from the pit of hell, and there's evidence, insurmountable amounts of evidence to validate or verify that. But everybody is out here rather trying to listen to rubbish. It's so disappointing what people are doing, but God is about to set the record straight. Even Candace Owens, that I was about to I'm literally slowly but surely tarrying away from Candace Owens. First it was the thing with Andrew Tate, interviewing a whole pimp, trying to make him look like he's a great guy. Now she's busy talking about how it is that some Muslims in Jerusalem, in Israel, are mistreated, or they are made to live in little communities that are just for Muslims. And they can't frequent Jewish sites. I'm like, Candace, you are a smart woman. How in the world did you go on right ahead and just grab that information, run with it without fact checking? That's the world for you. Like a whole bunch of people just tarrying from what is true, because you can't help but follow a devil that is making you irrational to a point where even as an esteemed journalist, you can't fact check the rubbish you speak to everybody. You are just in the grain of the prince of the path of the air, just following where it is that the fragrance of deception is leading your nose. Israel is not an apartheid state. It is a rhetoric, a dogma, propaganda that is being proliferated in order to intensify anti-Semitism. But then again, the very anti-Semitism spoken of right now has also been prophesied in the scriptures. God said that he is going to indeed make them a cup of staggering. The world is going to hate them, but they're going to conquer anyway. So South Africa, you with your beliefs that Israel is like whatever under heaven rubbish you were in apartheid. This is what God has to say about you and your fat lies. Your fat chunky lies. You, South Africa, who are standing with Iran that is so violent against, against Israel. You with this alliance, BRICS, where it is that it's Russia. Russia is all up in there. China is all up in there. What is this? Now you have invited Ethiopia. You've invited the UAE. You've invited Iran into that whole ecosystem, and Egypt. Yeah, that's what your BRICS alliance now is looking like. And when I look at BRICS, I'm like, especially the extended version of BRICS, where they added those other 5 countries. I'm like, does this just not look eerily like the war of Gog and Magog? It looks like the confederacy of nations around Israel that come up against her. That's what under heaven it is. That BRICS is. So South Africa being this small little minuscule, negligible, infinitesimal country out of BRICS, it's going to likely be among the first to be destroyed by God. South Africa is going to get taken out the way first because it's not even mentioned in the Gog and Magog alliance, but it is alleging with many of the countries that are Gog and Magog, and it is speaking the things of what it is that the Gog and Magog allegiance against Israel is speaking. So before God will crack a whip and decimate Iran, Ethiopia, Egypt, Kush, Put, all those people, Gog, Turkey or Russia, whatever, before the Lord will eliminate these guys in an earthquake, he will first take out the other little babies of Gog and Magog. I.E. South Africa, you're one of them. That's why I get it. If you are living in South Africa, leave if you can. I personally want to go, but I can't. Hambani. Because God is going to destroy this country. He is going to mow it to the ground. It is judged. It's a done deal. It is finalized. You gotta leave South Africa to live some kind of a semblance of a normal life, at least up to the rapture. Up to the rapture. Because then after the rapture, you don't have to worry because you're in heaven as a Christian. But if you don't want your life looking like mine, you gotta get out of here, Christians. It's gonna get bad for Christians in this country. There is no coming back from this. How in the world? Like the Lord made it clear, if you curse Israel, you curse yourselves as a country. South Africa's been cursing Israel for a minute. It's been standing with Philistia, the guy that Samson killed in his death. The guy that David put a stone in the head of. That's who South Africa is standing with. South Africa is standing with Goliath, and indeed Goliath is Goliath. He is big. The conglomerate of him, the coalition of him, is large in comparison to Israel. All the surrounding nations are in comparison to Israel. But one little stone decimates Goliath. And yes, South Africa is out just standing with a giant that it thinks is going to stand, when once upon a time a small little boy by the name of David killed that giant. We've got a David now. His name is Jesus. And indeed, it is a stone, according to the statue of Nebuchadnezzar, that crushes a statue, a giant one. Don't you see the typologies? If you think about that scripture, that body of work, that Nebuchadnezzar statue, what destroys it? What brings it to the ground? In other words, what decimates the kingdoms of this world? It is a stone, a rock of offense that comes from the sky and lands on the feet made of pot iron and pot clay, and the whole statue comes crashing to the ground. Just like that giant Nephilim by the name of Goliath was killed by one stone. One shiny little stone from David. And David is a typology of Jesus Christ. He is the son of David. That is what it is that he's called. And Christ will also be the stone, the rock of offense that rocks up and decimates the kingdoms of this world. Just like he destroyed Goliath. Just like David destroyed Goliath, so too will Christ destroy the kingdoms of this earth. So if you belong to a kingdom that is anti-Christ, you will be crushed and burned as that statue falls. And if you're a small little country like South Africa standing with anti-Israel nations, you are going to be among the first to go. The rock of offense is going to land on your pot iron, pot clay feet and bring you down with it. South Africa is on its way out. It is standing with Goliath, and Christ is David. That is what under heaven is going on. I'm praying to the Lord to leave, and Christians also gotta go. Let me read you Zechariah 12 in closing, so you can comprehend what it is that you South Africans are facing if you hang out in this little fiery furnace called Nebuchadnezzar's boiling room for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. You are going to be decimated. This is Sodom. You gotta go. South Africa has evidenced that it's over for it. They cannot come back from this unless they change their mind against Israel, which is highly unlikely. Just look at what Cyril Ramaphosa is saying. And if at all he is continuing in this stead and is not repenting, one, that is evidence of your fluffiness as a Christian nation. You're not really Christian. And two, it is your cue to leave. Your lot, if you're truly born again, get out if you can. Move to Europe. It's the best place I can think of now, or any other country in Africa that is not so anti-Semitic. You're gonna have to do your research on that one. I, in and of myself, don't know where in the world that would be. If you don't like the West, look into Africa and go and work there until the rapture. Literally raise your children in another land. You're not safe in this country. South Africa is not safe. South Africa is not safe for Christians, because it's only a matter of time before they intensify violence against Christians and Jews. And nothing we say is going to get heard, because everything we say gets swept under the rug in this country, given that nobody is even trying to stand on our behalf. Let's read Zechariah 12. The oracle of the word of the Lord concerning Israel. Thus declares the Lord, who stretched out the heavens and founded the earth and formed the spirit of man within him. Behold, I am about to make Jerusalem a cup of staggering to all the surrounding peoples. The siege of Jerusalem will also be against Judah. On that day, I will make Jerusalem a heavy stone for all the peoples, and all the nations of the earth will gather against it. South Africa has already literally queued in this like incendiary line. South Africa's already queuing. All the nations of the earth will gather against it. On that day, declares the Lord, I will strike every horse with panic and its rider with madness. Where am I? Yes, but for the sake of the house of Judah, I will keep my eyes open when I strike every horse of the peoples with blindness. Then the clans of Judah shall say to themselves, the inhabitants of Jerusalem have strength through the Lord of hosts, their God. Hey, Yazini, my speech like, on that day, I will make the clans of Judah like a blazing pot in the midst of wood, like a flaming torch among sheaves. Listen to this. This is now particularly poignant to warn this flaccid, fluffy nation called South Africa. And they shall devour to the right and to the left all the surrounding peoples, while Jerusalem shall be again inhabited in its place. And the Lord, okay, let's read that again. On that day, I will make the clans of Judah like a blazing pot in the midst of wood, like a flaming torch among sheaves, and they shall devour to the right and to the left all the surrounding peoples, while Jerusalem shall again be inhabited in its place in Jerusalem. And the Lord will give salvation to the tents of Judah first, that the glory of the house of David and the glory of the inhabitants of Jerusalem may not surpass that of Judah. On that day, the Lord will protect the inhabitants of Jerusalem, so that the feeblest among them on that day shall be like David, and the house of David shall be like God, like the angel of the Lord going before them. And on that day, I will seek to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem. Let's say that last verse, verse one more time. And on that day, I will seek to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem. Yeah, that's all I shall read. Yeah, I will read up to there, because then afterwards it speaks about him whom they have pierced, and I will pour out on the house of David. They will eventually repent. The Jews will ultimately go back to God. That was Zechariah 12 from 1 to 9. Yeah, Zechariah 12 from 1 to 9. So South Africa is a nation that has stood against Israel, and she is literally among all who would try to heave it away. All who would try to heave Jerusalem away will be surely cut into pieces. As long as I'm able to speak, that's all that matters, right? I was able to save everything, thank God. I had to save because I had spoken for so long, and I was concerned that I had lost all that content, but it got saved. This is the end now, right? Yeah. Like, this is what happens to nations that turn against God. And right now, South Africa has made a proclamation on a strange little rooftop that it wants to heave away Jerusalem. It has cut diplomatic ties with Jerusalem. It has attempted to sever, to basically decimate or bring to the ground, make into a mall, create into a residential property or a block of flats, the Israeli embassy in the country. They want to get rid of it. That is what our nation is out here literally trying to do. So if you are South African and you are Christian or even an unbeliever, but you don't want to call the bluff of God, a God you don't even trust in, while you are busy exploring your relationship with Jesus, move to Europe. Move to Europe, especially if you are highly qualified. Already South Africa is busy crying, complaining about the skills exodus. Well, it's about time they get drained of more skills, because this is not a blessed land. It's a dry, arid desert now. It's done. The only thing that will rescue this country is repentance and basically booting Cyril Ramaphosa out of office, him and his money in the couch. I don't know why you still like him so much. And then worse is that you literally thoroughly imagine in your noodles somehow that Julius Malema is a replacement for the ANC. You thoroughly imagine that when the guy's busy out here trying to kill all white people. Okay, yeah. Do you, South Africa? All I can say is, if at all you believe me, leave the country, start making plans. Because in just a matter of years, this land will be uninhabitable for Christians. Don't say I didn't warn you. And as for me, I'm begging at the throne of grace. I guess I'm not phone, guys, but it's okay. I'm almost done anyway. Yeah, I'm begging at the throne of grace for God to move me out the country. I gotta go. I gotta leave. Unless the rapture happens, in which case, literally, like, sigh of relief. Like, sigh of relief. I am breathing a sigh of relief because of the rapture. Otherwise, if there is no rapture happening any minute now, I gotta go out of South Africa. I don't know where, but wherever it is that a whole government has not basically declared that Hamas is not crazy. There are only 2 continents on the earth right now that have made a decision that Israel has a right to defend itself. It's North America and Europe. And that tells me that that's currently the only places that are still somewhat safe for Christians in the world. Otherwise, China wants to act indifferent, but they've obviously taken a stand for Palestine. While Turkey, which is also in Europe, really might as well be in the Middle East, Turkey. Like, proper. Recep is kind of ridiculous. Like, Eric Stackelback likes to call Turkey like a member of NATO in name only, because like he's not, and him and his country are not at all standing with basically the values of Europe. Yeah, it's literally just America and many other countries in Europe that do believe in the justice that Israel is in dire need of, even though they are going to increase pressure for Israel to come up with a ceasefire or something. However, nations that are taking a bold, violent, vehement stand against Israel to a point of wanting its destruction, those are, of course, in the Middle East. I believe China is on that tip. India stood with Israel at first. I don't know what's going on now. Everybody wants a ceasefire, however. But nations that have come out, like proper, on the rooftops, and basically stood strong and firm with Israel at the beginning are largely in Europe and in North America. Meaning that South Africa, like proper, like you gotta go, guys. Like nations that stand against God and try to heave away God's land are gonna be cut into pieces, highly safe. But hey, I guess all I can do is wait on the Lord for either my exiling out of South Africa or the rapture. Something gotta give. But I cannot stay in South Africa. I definitely cannot stay in South Africa because it's not safe. I see myself as Lot, and I see this as Sodom. Fire and brimstone is about to land. Inevitably, it is coming. And if I don't get out, I'm gonna make like Lot's wife and be turned into a pillar of salt. But it's not like I want to stay. I feel trapped here. But I am warning anyone that can get out. Start making plans. Start applying for jobs outside of this country. Start investigating other nations in Africa that aren't so anti-Semitic and move there. Because God is not going to just decimate them. First, starting with likely the economy. Increasing the income gap even further. The Lord is likely first going to attack South Africa economy. It's already dwindling, but it's going to be unemployment first, and then violence is going to ramp up. Gender-based violence is also going to go through the roof. It's going to be a whole bunch of socio-economic issues that ultimately end up in social-political strife that will then ultimately lead to civil war. And so the land will now be kind of desolate and insufferable to live in. And the poor are going to start to likely loot and plunder the households as well as the wealth and the stores of the wealthy, just out of a sense of injustice and a desire to get their own recompense already. There's going to be a civil war that's going to ultimately break out in this country, and it will have been sparked by the irresponsibility of your leaders. You don't just get to put solar panels on rich people's houses and ignore the poor while they struggle to eat. Like, it's not going to work. This country is going down the dogs. Make like Trevor Noah and get a job in America. I'm just saying. I'm signing out in Christ's name, Cran K. Bye. I wouldn't even recommend you go to America. Go to Europe. Bye.